We're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa, on Channel Africa Radio, from an African perspective. And the International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan says the court is renewing an investigation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, focusing on allegations of crimes committed in the conflict-torn North Kivu province since early 2022. In a statement, Khan says the probe in North Kivu will not be limited to parties or members of specific groups, but will examine holistically, independently and impartially the responsibility of all actors allegedly committing crimes within the court's jurisdiction. And for more on this, we are joined in studio by Channel Africa's head of the Kiswahili service, Nixon Katembo. Nixon, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Now, Nixon, what's your reaction? We've had numerous conversations about the DRC and the atrocities that are taking place in the North Kivu province. What's your reaction to Karim Khan as the International Criminal Court prosecutor stating that now they are going to be doing an investigation again in terms of everyone who's alleged to be involved?
I think for me it shows a lack of urgency on the crime committed in the Democratic Republic of Congo, not only about what have been set in the timeline of the investigation from 2022 up until now, whereas the very same United Nations have documented the crime committed in the DRC since 1996 on the onset of the AFDL rebellion led by Rwanda and Uganda that brought Kabila to power. So you see there is a laxity in terms of dealing with the issue of the DRC, and one might understand that. For me, I look at it as a fatigue from the international community, but in any case, it's a juxtaposure around the issues of who cares. We saw many hullabaloo being made around the issue of Ukraine with Russia. Yet we do not see the same eager happening between the conflict in the DRC and according to the very same United Nations group of experts saying that Rwanda has invaded the DRC, and in this particular instance since the M23 started. The last report I read this past June shows that there are about 4,000 Rwandan soldiers actively engaging in a war on Congolese soil, helping the M23. And you wonder why there has not been such a noise made in terms of aggressions that have been documented by the very same United Nations. But also, worst of all, the killing of civilians. The particular massacre that we're talking about is about 152 people that were killed in Kishishe by the M23, who were retaliating on a civilian because the civilian did not support the cause of the rebellion. There has been then since a lot of massacre happening around the Ruchuru, Masisi, and Walikale area. Just of recent, you saw the government of the DRC organizing over 250 people in a sort of a grave mass burial, mass burial for people who have been killed by the rebels. But worst of all is how many other people are dying of the consequences of a displacement in displaced camp. The last time I was in Goma, I was in a place called a camp of displaced called Mushaki, and there is another place called it's just next adjacent to the Lake Kivu. Forget the name. That place, when you're there, when I reached the camp, they told me that 2 people have just died 2 days ago because of gas inhalation. And this is an area where, because the Lake Kivu is a high deposit of natural gas. And because of that gas that is active, it has not been exploited. It affected the people. This is a methane gas in the Lake Kivu. And you have now people being driven and housed in such an area that naturally is dangerous for human habitation. And wonder, will all this come into investigation of the International Criminal Court?
Now, Nixon, this is a second. This investigation is because of a second result of a referral. This was filed by the DRC government on the 23rd of May 2023. Thus, the reaction and response from the ICC. Why would a country refer this matter to an international court?
Okay, it's a normal practice and standards that under the Rome Statute Protocol, a country can refer the matter to the ICC. And that's why you see many cases, like the case of Kony in Uganda, or the case of Dominic Ongwen, the case of Charles Taylor. These are cases that have been referred by state themselves. And in this case of the DRC, it is not different, because it's one of the obligations under the Rome Statute that if there is a crime committed, state institutions mandated to do such can refer a case to the ICC for investigations. And therefore, it shows you the lack of internal mechanism within the DRC also to be able to investigate this massacre, but also the powerlessness of the state to protect civilians from these kind of atrocities that have been happening.
Do you think anything will come of this investigation?
I'm not really entirely optimistic about what is happening and the investigations. It is some I would call it as a dressage to show that something is being done. But in real sense, one would have gone back really to the 1996. I can cite several mass graves that have been documented since 1996 up until today. You call the Kishishe, you call the massacre of Kaziba, you call the massacre of Mwenga, you call the massacre of Uchicho in places like Butembo, you call massacre of Irumu. So many mass graves where citizens are killed en masse through hacking machetes and so on. I'm sorry, these are kind of graphic for sensitive listeners, and I have to be cognizant of that. But this is the situation of the Congo, and one wonder why the investigations now are going to focus on these few, although their magnitude in excess of the crime that have been committed, but one would have expected that the ICC will broaden the scope of investigations to encompasses all these massacres that have been, because those who committed those massacres are well documented within the UN report. Unfortunately, they have been roaming around with impunity and not being able to be held accountable, and they make it as a norm in creating even more rebel groups so that they can, siphon the natural resources of the country, and that's the problem.
Nixon, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.